Welcome back to Deli Productions. I'm Michael DeLiso. What if I told you that there was a tool that rigged a whole entire car in just under 10 minutes, that auto steers when attached to path animation, and that can link up to terrain and have dynamic body suspension in just a few clicks? Would you believe me? Well, get ready to believe, because I'm going to introduce to you the next must-have tool. It's called the UAC car rig, which stands for the Ultimate Adjustable Car Rig. This thing is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to rigging and animating cars, giving you professional results in just a few clicks. Let me show you how easy it really is. So let's start by rigging our Jeep Sahara here. So I have my model here. It's pretty cool. I don't have any interior in this, so I won't be able to fully demonstrate how to rig up the interior like steering wheel, but I'll show you how to access those options and how to line it up just so you can see. I've already installed the UAC rig and it creates a little button on your shelf. So I'm just going to click this and this is going to open up this panel here. This panel is really our best friend for everything, for animating, rigging. It's pretty great. So when you first launch it, it's going to be in this kind of mode where it doesn't fully know what to do yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit import. This is going to import basically a UAC rig for us to line up and set up our rig. So you see that brought in a few things. So the first thing that we're going to do to rig our Jeep is to just grab these controllers here. These are for the tires. Now I'm going to bring them roughly just to the outside here. And I'm going to go into the right view. So when lining this up, you want to line it up in the center of your tire. Depending on your model, you might have a vertex right in the middle. I have had a couple that have had that, and it's really nice because you could just vertex snap to that point. If you don't have that, you do just have to line it up manually. And this seems pretty decent. Maybe just slightly like that. That seems pretty nice. Let's do it for this side. And that feels pretty good. Cool. So now that that's set up, we need to do the tire width. So we lined it up earlier, but it's on the outside. There's a little attribute here called tire width. So we could just middle mash drag. We're just going to take that to the outside of that wall. Do the same for the rear. That works pretty well. So now you're almost pretty much done at this point. There are a couple of options that you would do though if you say had steering wheel and wanted to do say the hood, the trunk. So I'm just going to select this controller and hit F in my outliner. That's going to expose and get us to the area where some of the other things to align are. So you'll see this group called body align group. If we open that up, there's a bunch here. So we have steering wheel, bonnet align, boot align, fuel flap, glove box, rear view mirror if you want to move it around, wing mirror align, visor, wipers, seats, all of that, the doors. It's pretty great. I don't need that for what I'm going to do and how I'm just going to demonstrate the animation, but this is where you would do that. So just for example, if we do front door align, if I hide that, we're going to want to position this, I would imagine basically around here. You can kind of see the image here and it helps kind of guide. So you want to put that on that point. Again, I'm not going to set that up right now. The big one that I would set up is the steering wheel. If I just go to X-ray, we get this arrow. And this arrow, we want to put smack in the middle of our steering wheel. And we want to make sure it's aligned in the proper angle that our steering wheel is. Like I said, I'm not going to be doing that today because I don't have a steering wheel, but that is pretty much the process of rigging any of that stuff up. It's fairly simple. So now that we have everything lined up, it's time to rig our car together. So there are a couple different connection methods here that we could use. We could use skin, constrain, or parent. I like to use skin because I like to use this in Unreal Engine. And this is a lot easier to transfer over when it's skinned because it's a skeletal mesh. So the process is fairly simple. We're going to select our geometry and click what part it is assigned to. So we'll start from the top. I'm just going to select this group here and assign it to what it needs to be, which are the tires. So I'm just going to select tires. And you can see now our mesh has a skin cluster because it has been bound to the system that UAC has. So let's just go down. This is the body, body. This is our wheels. That's the body. These are our brakes. This is more wheels. More body. 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 Body and body. And before we move forward, if you had anything assigned for the front door or the steering wheel, you would select that geometry and select it accordingly. So there's a steering wheel here, you select the steering wheel, click it. For the doors, there's a little component menu. So this could be the window, the front windows, the front doors, the mid windows if you have like a limousine, or the back windows, as well as your windshield wipers, some glove box, mirrors, stuff like that, the hood, the trunk, a moon roof, and the gas tank flap. So you would select the mesh and then click whatever it is accordingly if you were to do that. But since ours is all set up, we can now go into a new mode, which is up here. So currently it's on setup, but if we click this, it goes to animate, and now we have curves. So now that we have our controls visible, let's go down the list and see what is capable with this. So our root control has some path options. We'll get to that shortly, but it also has some visibility swaps. You can also change the control type. So that setup to animate, we don't necessarily need this. We could select the root control and change it in here if we needed to. Moving on to the tuner control. This allows us to kind of customize our ride. If we want to adjust our ride height to be a little bit lower to the ground, we could. We can camber the wheels, whether they just be the front or the rear, toe for the rear and the front. We can just adjust it in a universal sense, which is pretty nice. Next one is our drive control. Our drive control is literally what it says. It is going to be to move forward, to animate. And when we move this forward, the wheels go properly, sticking to the ground, and it's pretty great. There's options for steering. There's oversteer, which is pretty cool. So if you need to kind of have that back end kick out on a turn, you can do the oversteer. There's some understeer as well. You could do forward tip, and fun, you could go back and forth with it, which is fun to mess around with. You could also do side tip. Side tip is pretty great. Front wheel spin, rear wheel spin. So if you need to do kind of like a burnout or something. This is a fun option. I don't think I've ever had to use this, but there's a fly option, which is pretty fun, pretty silly. Then there's path drive. Again, we'll get to paths shortly, but this is going to be pretty cool. Then there's a couple others, oversteer traction. This is, I think, just kind of multipliers to our oversteer and understeer, and then terrain link, and we'll get to that shortly as well. Next bit is our body control. The body control is pretty awesome. We can put on dynamics, so it will actually dynamically move to the animation that we have. We can also put just a noise here. So let's just, for example, I'll put it to 1 and I'll just hit play. You see, we just have an ambient body control, which is pretty nice. This is just kind of cycling over. We also have a shake control. So this is just giving us similar to the noise, but more for just that ambient rumbling. You do 1, it's gonna go a little crazy, but we can do the up and down and tilt speed. So if we do this like to like a 0.2. I want to go extreme just so you could see this. But you could really customize just a nice little shake as it's going and layer on top of that with just some more macro movements or use the dynamics. So building this up in layers are pretty great. Then there's the wheel control. The wheel control are individual wheels, and as we raise it, it does move the actual body, which is pretty nice. We can spin it, and there's a little multiplier. There's grip spin. I'm not too positive of what the difference is between those. If somebody knows, please let me know in the comments. You could camber single, you could tow it, and you could fly it all singularly. And then there is the steering wheel control if we had the steering wheel control. The controller is still going to be there to move the wheels, but it's just not going to move anything on the actual inside. So that's all the controllers. Let's look into some of the other features. So what's pretty great is a path option. So I use paths a lot of the time when I'm doing vehicles, whether it be flying or driving. So I'm gonna go to create and create a CV curve tool. Make sure all that's on, and I'm just we'll go from the beginning. I'm holding shift to make a straight line, but then I'll do a nice turn. And turn back. So I go back into here. This turn might be a little strange, but we'll see what it gives me. So in our window here, I'm just going to select the curve and add selected curve path, and it automatically snaps it on. Now, if I hit play, you'll see nothing happens, and that's because similarly to attaching to a motion path, instead of adding keys, it is on our drive control, and we have the option to animate it. So if I slide this path drive, it now moves on my curve, which is pretty sweet. Now it's fun though, if you see here, as I do my drive, it is turning the wheels. This is called auto steer. So if we go to 0, it goes straight and it turns it off. We can also do a number more than 1. That way it kind of multiplies it a little bit. So if I go back, and you'll see it's actually turning before we actually turn, which is how you would drive, right? You can also adjust the distance. So if you wanted it to happen a little bit earlier, it can happen earlier. If you want it to happen later, it can happen later. So this is really, really nice and such an amazing feature. Just having that auto steer, having that path option, it's pretty great. Now, something that we saw earlier, if I go back to the root control, there was curve mirror. Well, we could turn that on, and now we are mirrored. Our curve is just mirrored from what it was. So this is pretty great. If all of a sudden you need, hey, instead of the left turn, it needs to be left turn. Well, we can easily do that. And we can still adjust this curve if we needed to. So if you just right click the curve, go to control vertex, you could still move it around however you need while it's on. And if you want to get rid of that curve, all you have to do is remove all curve, or just remove the active curve path. So remove all, yes, remove all, and now we're back to origin and the curve is gone. But it's not fully gone. It was just hidden in our outliner. What the tool does when we hit add selected curve path, it actually creates a curve in the group node here and hides the original. So you always maintain the original in case you needed it. And one thing I just forgot to mention, when you hit the skin stuff in the mode setup, It's not going to move the geometry into any folder. But if we go into the top node, there's a geometry node and then a render one. We could just move all of this under render. And voila, it's a little cleaned up in the outliner. So for the next feature, I'm going to have to import my environment. So if I take this geometry and I hit add selected terrain, let's get closer to our Jeep so you can see it work. It snaps the wheels to the geometry, which is pretty cool. And if we use our drive controller, you'll see all of this works pretty well. It moves with our geometry. But I do notice that over a ridge, it does kind of get crazy. And that's because the controller is still going up. We can move it down and it can be fine, but that might be a little too tedious. So let's select our geometry and let's remove the terrain. And I'm going to show just another method that I like to do when using this terrain. What's great for this terrain option is that you get all these little bumps and everything in the tires. So you're getting the wheels moving up and stuff on little bumps. But if you don't want to have to kind of counter animate with the body, this is one thing that we could do. So I'm going to select the geometry and go up here. There's a magnet here that says make the selected object live. So when I make that live, basically anything that we create is going to snap to that surface. So if I go to create and I go to my curve, I'll create a CV curve and I'm just gonna click and it should, there it is. It's kind of hidden underneath. So if I look through, there's my curve. And this is on this surface. So if I hit enter there, I'm going to turn off live surface because I don't want everything to be live surface. I'm going to select that curve and I'm going to add the selected curve path. And this was way off. So I'm just going to put this back to its origin. There we go. So already, if I do my path drive, already this is pretty cool. This is already to the surface. I'll just make that linear for now. It's driving pretty fast. And we can take this curve that's here and we could raise it up just a tad. Now there are moments here that it goes underneath, and that's because I didn't put enough CV curves. So one way that we could just get around it is just bringing it up a little bit, just so it doesn't fully submerge, and that'll help us in our cleanup. Or just when you're making the actual path, just put more points. It's going to snap to it. It's going to be a little better. So this is all really cool, but as you can see, it's still hovering, right? Well, now we can select our geometry and hit add selected terrain. So this is going to snap it to it. And now we have something a lot better. Now there's still a little bit of counter animating that we're going to have to do just on this incline. But this is already pretty great, and it's pretty easy to just take this and do a really quick pass. So let's do that. Gonna work a little backwards. Here we go. Just move up every couple of frames. Just make sure it's a little proper. I'm just doing the height right now just to get something good in that sense. Then we'll go into each of these keyframes that I'm setting up, and we'll just make sure that the rotations are good. And we don't really need to do too much to this. There's a lot that's already pretty great. So let's look. So this is already pretty good. From here, this we could probably just rotate slightly like that. This is probably the opposite. Just bring this up a little bit. Bank it just a tad. That banking's pretty good. Bank that. Pretty nice. But you can see how quickly we're gonna get some pretty incredible results. And then we could just throw whatever cameras that we want on this. Raise it up just a little bit and tilt it. Definitely a moment here that I missed, so we'll just go back in and we'll fix it. You notice the main things that I've used this on so far has been really just pretty much F1 tracks. So, you know, it's not exactly as hilly as this, but you can see how quickly we actually could get something that works pretty well. Let's set up a camera. This will be really good for just showing us how everything is looking. So I wanna, let's see, maybe on top of this ridge is where we can kind of catch up with it. We'll move it forward just a little bit. We'll kind of pan adjust with it as we follow. Let's turn off all of the curves. Get a cool little whip pan here. As I'm doing this camera, I'm just making sure that the Jeep is really actually pushing the camera and leading it. So this is probably a little too short of a stop right here. So kind of like where this is, So I'll do that, and then I'll go back and just ease up on that pan over to ease into that. Yeah, that's a lot better. We can probably track that a little better in the beginning. So let's do that. Like right here. And right now this car has amazing traction. Now this isn't even including the body dynamics. So let's see if we can add that quickly. So we could turn the dynamics on, but there is a controller for it. So if we go to our box here, we're just going to hit view dynamic, and it's going to give us the control that has all of that. So start frame is 1. So that's good for us. And let's just see what that will give. Pretty crazy as it flies over the ridge. So I think our sensitivity could go down and our amount can go down, but it's pretty funny. Now up and down is going to be literally just translation. Our forward tilt is going to be the rotation, and side tilt is the rotation sideways. So I'm going to say 0.3 on the side. I'm going to say 0.2 on the forward tilt. Let's see what that gives, because it seems like it was a lot in the tilt. Yeah, there's still a lot of up and down, but this is feeling already a lot better. So if that was at a 1, let's do a 0.4. That's probably still a lot, so I'll turn it to a 0.2 and maybe even try a 0.1 on the forward tilt. The body dynamics are really just there to give us a lot of secondary motion for free. That's feeling pretty nice. That's pretty cool. And that's how easy this thing is to set up. So let me know in the comments if you're going to be checking out the UAC rig. It's absolutely a game changer. I love it. It makes vehicles and driving so much easier instead of having to hand key and make sure nose is on vector and everything. Hope you had a good one. And if you're interested in more videos about learning animation, check out these videos here. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one.